PBS 106.7 on your dial, the radio station for the hip listener.
I can remember being told by some mentors that I had here early on about the hectic move to this place in Collingwood from when we moved from our place in St Kilda, and how it was just a mad dash to keep the radio on while all the construction and stuff was happening around. There are some amazing photos I can remember being shown by Peter Merritt, Mr. Doop here, about when the construction was going on here, and you can see an announcer with their headphones on and about to go on air and giving a countdown to the builders who were like going at it with their hammers and drills, and when they went on air everyone just had to stop. And it's just like really nice to have that again as like the quality radio and world-class radio being number one, even if everything's mad around. It's kind of a cool story.
PBS back then, it was started by a group of, they were tech heads actually, but they were heavily into punk music. So they started PBS so they could play their music preference. Back in the late 80s, we used to run a live show every Saturday morning from our studios in Fitzroy Street. The building we were in was called the Ritz Mansions, and the name sounds very grand, but the building wasn't. And their lift, unfortunately, had been out of commission for about 5 years. So there we were every Saturday morning dragging up drum kits, even pianos, bass rigs, everything up 3 flights of stairs, setting up and then dragging it all back down again. And it was just fabulous radio. It was just so much fun.
Well, I choose PBS because it was the radio station that jumped up to me. The one that has every 2 hours a different genre with an expert behind the microphone. And it wasn't that much talking. Not talkback radio, no opinions, basically information, good music, different music, so eclectic that it just grabbed me.
It's one of the reasons I picked it actually, so it's a bit different to some of the other community stations. The music speaks for itself. That's really what it was. I've worked government and university offices for years and I was so sick of talking. All I wanted was music, so that was one of the reasons. And the sort of music that you don't hear elsewhere.
So it all began because my friend CC Disco began a show here at PBS. And I was like, what the hell is radio all about? I was so curious, and I said to CC, do you mind if I just come in one day? I want to see what it's all about. So I walked in, and from that moment I was like, yeah, this is cool. So I did the announcer course at PBS, and basically it all went from there. I just did little fills here and there. That went for about 3 years, and then finally I put in a submission for my own show, and that's been going for 2 years now. So I've been here for 5 years volunteering.
I've been DJing since the early 1990s, so I have sort of been on here as a guest every now and then over the years, but I was offered the opportunity to do the show in 2009, and for me that was something which was very exciting because it's the first sort of opportunity that had come up to do a regular show exploring Indian beats and music and actually sort of playing that for a mainstream audience, if you like, and being able to talk to them about the music, which is my passion.
I answered the call to come in and do some maintenance around here and ended up doing the announcers course, which was rather fun, and put in a demo, and they gave me a slot on Insomnia, which is 2 o'clock till 6 in the morning once a fortnight, which is an interesting experience to be up at that time of night, but very fun, and it's a really good grinding for doing radio. Pajama People sort of evolved started out as a very sort of prog and a heavy rock show, and it sort of evolved into something that's probably a little bit more psychedelic than it was when it first started. So there's a lot of psychedelic influences creep in. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan from way back, so that sort of creeps into the show occasionally, that sort of influence. And I have a lot of local and international acts for interviews and try to get a bit of live music occasionally through the studio, which is good.
How did I get the show? I used to do a breakfast show. At the time, we had different breakfast announcers across each of the days. I had the Monday morning breakfast show. Decision was made to make it all the same announcers through the week, and I was invited to pitch a show, and I pitched a drive show, and I was lucky enough to secure this particular one. I had to pitch 10 names to the programs manager at the time. The name was Melissa across from the table, just went, "Ooh, fang it," and that just suddenly leapt out at me, and it was like, absolutely. So that's yes, that's where the name came from. It's an Australian slang for going fast in a car. It's a drive show. It seemed like a bit of a match made in heaven, and it's managed to, as I said, have a life of its own since that point. I'm doing my thing. How you doing out there, everybody? My name is Rory. The show is Bang It! And I do hope that you are well out there in listener land, taking care of business and doing what you do as only you know how. I've tried doing your thing. I can't do it as well as you can. That's your thing.
A lot of my listeners ask me for a 2-hour show per week, how long does it actually take me to prepare for a 2-hour show? I would say that on an average it probably takes me maybe 15 to 20 hours a week to prepare. Then there's listening to new releases, which we get a lot of. Our new releases come from record companies, distributors, and the artists themselves.
I like to get deep into one thing and then I just chop and change, and again, it's really fun because it's not like a set pattern every time. Now just sort of getting through a couple of different brackets of different genres or different decades and whatever, different focus, and it's been really good. It's kind of has a lot of freedom.
So the music I choose varies week to week, and it's pretty much based on what I find that week, what I'll just stumble across, because I'll be listening to music at home and it'll be on shuffle and I'll be like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that music and I want to put that into the show this week. So usually I'll find one song and it will just go from there. It'll be like this cascade effect. One
of the things I do is I'd look at the charts, like for example the BBC Asian network charts, to see what are the latest tunes going on at the moment, what's new, what's hot. And then, if I've come up with a theme that I have in mind for the show, I'll sit down and go through my collection, and just see what tracks you want to play. That in itself, even though the show's 1 hour, that usually takes me 1 or 2 hours to do that.
I work in my car a lot. I drive, so I keep my iPod and with the CDs and memory sticks and you name it in my car. So I'm constantly reviewing music. So that's one place. The second place is my studio at home. I have a little room that on Friday nights I sit down after dinner, turn the computer on, put the speakers up and do the selection. Sometimes doing a selection for a show of 2 hours takes 3 and 4 hours. It is, I would suggest, a constant battle and a constant enjoyment listening in the car and also at home.
What's my favourite thing? Oh, my favourite thing is doing my show. That's the beginning, the middle and the end, really. Doing my show is the thing that I like. I do my show and I leave in the nicest possible way. I don't have any particular spaces around here that I utilise other than my locker. My locker is probably one of the most favourite things that I like about PBS in its, as a concept, really. It seems kind of stupid, it's just a little locker, but in actuality it's a big deal because it means that anyone can walk in off the street, they can take their CD and they can put it in my locker without any third party involvement, and I think that's one of the best things about community radio. So if you had to ask what my favourite space is at PBS besides the audio studio, it would be my locker.
At PBS, the best thing is the text line, which I know a lot of other stations do not have. And it's nice because it feels like it's a bit of a monologue sometimes, but as soon as you get a text that comes in, you have that dialogue again, or someone will call up and it feels like, oh, hold on, I'm not speaking to myself like a crazy woman. There's actually someone who's listening, appreciating, wants to share their story or wants to give me their suggestions. And that's the best thing about my show. I think if we didn't have that, I wouldn't enjoy radio as much. And I don't even know if I would stick it out, to be honest, because I think it would just feel like I was playing music in my bedroom otherwise. So it is the dialogue that I love about PBS.
People call. I have regular callers who I love. I just know them by name and I look forward to their call. And if I don't hear from them in a couple of weeks, I kind of get worried. Like, what are you doing? Sometimes I'll mention on air. And I'm always amazed our PBS audience is so intelligent and they know so much stuff, and I'll think I've done all my research and I'll ask some obscure question and be like, I got to the end of the road with this, I couldn't find any more about this artist, and someone will just text in and be like, I know this story, or they'll give me the info, and it's a nice loop. You know, radio is not the end of a connection, it's sort of this really alive medium.
Radio is my idiom. It's an instant thing. Even though you cannot see your listener, I get an image of who's listening and how they're reacting. My listeners are very good at finding out exactly what they're listening to. If they like something, they'll instantly either go online and purchase it or head down to their favourite record shop and purchase it. So that's fantastic. I had one particular guy who regularly sends me a text and says, will you stop playing all this wonderful music? You're sending me broke.
For me, like, I love the fact that you're broadcasting to an unlimited audience. So like when I DJ at festivals or weddings or, you know, clubs, obviously, you know, that's the people in that room are the ones you're playing to, or in the park, wherever you are. I just love that whole aspect of, you know, there's, you know, unlimited people out there listening. It's not even in that moment itself, but as I said, because there's archives, you know, there are people who can go back, you know, if they missed a show, and listen to it later. And for me, it's just a real privilege because I love being able to play our music to a mostly non-Indian audience. I like making it more accessible where you can hear it on a mainstream station like PBS, and I can talk to the audience about what I'm playing, and, you know, sort of talk about what's the difference between Bollywood and Bhangra. You know, talk about the artist, talk about the music. You know, the fact that the music's become mainstream, I think it's awesome.
I think the main difference between PBS when I first started back in the mid-80s and PBS now is our financial stability. We're very lucky now that we have great studios here, great equipment. We still, as we did way back then, beg, borrow and steal whatever we can, if I can use that term, but lightly. Back in the 80s, we were always having to run fundraisers just to stay afloat. I remember one occasion, one of our other long-time announcers, Vince Peach, was on air with his famous soul show Soul Time, and our then station manager Maz Knock came running in and said, Vince, you're going to have to get on air. If we don't pay the electricity bill by 5 o'clock tonight, we're off air. So that particular occasion, within half an hour, this very kind gentleman arrived with his checkbook and the bill was paid. So we lived to see another day.
Our funding, how we run the station, is by passionate memberships. People are passionate about independent, diverse, underrepresented music. So they're paying out of their own pocket to hear this music from, you know, the announcers who are, you know, experts in their area. So, yeah, I really think that's what the whole thing is all about, why it keeps running year in, year out. For the music community connects with the station and we connect with the music. So there's this wonderful symbiotic relationship. And, you know, people can listen without, you know, contributing, but people do. And a big focus on, you know, women. We have our International Women's Day, all women, all broadcast and all day. So it's wonderful, a chance to be part of it.
Independent community radio has certainly changed a lot. It's a lot more think professional is probably the wrong word, but it's an awful lot more polished than it once was. People take it a bit more seriously now than they did before. The old days, it was very much like there's a lot of people who are, shall we say, a little bit inebriated on air, and that has changed drastically.
I wouldn't describe the changes as radical, but PBS as a station, it's a professional setup here, and professional in the sense, they take the whole, every aspect is taken, really seriously, and there's a lot of attention to detail. I think there's been a lot of evolving, and one of the examples of that is the whole radio on demand service and social media, having an app, and now you can hear the show all over the world whenever you like. There's literally 6 months of archives, for each program, I think, on our website. So I find all that really incredible. That's sort of moving with the whole technology side of it, isn't it?
This is my bad boy, this studio here, because this is the only studio that actually has the CDJs. So essentially you can DJ in Studio 3, which I think is nice because it provides a whole other element, a whole other energy to the show. So especially if I have guests, it can feel a bit more like a party, a bit more of a club set. So you can have many different vibes, show to show, purely just because of this equipment here.
There's also fun parts of the PBS space which remind me of the sort of grassroots nature of this place. I can see a particular door from the studio which is a recycled door from a hospital, which just reminds me of how this place is totally salvaged and put together, and all the money here is spent on the equipment and the technology rather than other kind of mod cons. It sounds kind of ghetto, but it's also just reminds you about the passion and the effort that's gone into building this place. It's kind of a cool story.
What PBS is doing is very important, I think, for the community here. It's a specialist music station. I really don't know of many stations like that in Australia which are playing all these different genres of music that, you just don't get to hear it anymore. Music for me, it cuts across all cultures, all languages, and it's a way of bringing people together.
So many things inspire me about this community. It's very hard to sort of narrow it down to a couple, but broadly I feel that radio is such an important medium. When you're announcing, or when I'm announcing anyway, I feel kind of this intoxication with this world that's created, and it's hard to describe, but it's really special when you realise a community of people who are listening with you and getting excited with you and sharing things with you. It's really amazing. Even when I was doing my first graveyard shifts, we're talking like 2 to 6 a.m. and you feel like in normal life that's just the dead zone, or that's just the witching hours or whatever, but even then, in that point in my life, I was just connecting with people, creating a space for things that I felt were important. I was in charge of that. Someone had given me this time to sort of share what was important to me. And there's a real positive energy that's, maximised by that.
Working as a volunteer helps you in many ways, because you know that you're only doing it because you enjoy it or you're getting something out of it. There's absolutely, once money is taken away from it as a concept, you're doing it for one reason and one reason only, which is that you are either enjoying yourself or you're learning something, and that's what volunteering is kind of best at. That being said, the best thing about volunteering, I think, is always going to be the people that you would meet. I would heartily recommend anybody, if you are feeling at all at a dead end, volunteer doing something. It will absolutely help. And if you are unemployed, volunteer doing something. If you are fully employed but feeling a lack of something in your life, then volunteer. Find something you can volunteer at, and I guarantee the network of people that you will meet will make it worthwhile. It's the most important thing. Doing something is much better. If the 100% thing I can guarantee is that if you do nothing, nothing will happen. I can guarantee that if you do something, something will happen. Can't guarantee what that something may be, however, I can guarantee that doing something is much better than doing nothing. And that's what volunteering is all about.
My number one favourite thing is the community aspect. I love how many people I have met because of PBS, how many people I get to talk to on the phone, on air, purely because I'm just sharing music that I like to listen to. And I love that people appreciate it and can feel my passion and want to support it and want to actually be exposed to all of these different sounds. So the fact that I can play a gig and someone come up to me like, Adriana, I listen to Opalakia and, you know, I love what you do. That to me is so special, and that is a new interaction, potentially a new friendship. I've made a lot of friends purely because of having this show. So that's very special to me.